I'm fairly new to Reddit. I downloaded it a few months ago to research true crime, but after this I knew I had to tell this story to someone that wasn't my circle of friends and family. In my 8th grade year, I moved in with a family member after my mother had passed away. This family member lived pretty far into the country, so because of this I had to take the bus to my new school. I used to live in town before the move, so this was my first time on a bus, besides school field trips, but then there were other adults present. In the morning there were only about 6 or 7 students on the bus, and I was always the first person to be picked up and the last one to be dropped off after school. For the first few weeks of school everything seemed fine. The students were quiet and everyone kept to themselves, having their headphones in and whatnot. Being the first to get on, I always headed straight to the back of the bus to avoid everyone. Not that I had an issue with anyone, I was just socially awkward, and the more people I could avoid talking to, the better. As for the driver, we can call him Tom. He seemed like a normal bus driver. He didn't say a word to anyone and just did his job. He began getting a little friendlier towards me when he dropped me off, since I was the last one to get off, but it was never anything strange. It was a smile and a "see you in the morning" or "have a nice night." Nothing I would ever suspect. Things continued like this for a while, nothing extraordinary happening. Until, of course, when I, being a 15-year-old girl who had just lost her mother, decided to throw a giant tantrum and beg that I no longer live with this family member anymore. I was really missing the city, my old friends and my old school. So, about 2 months after going to this school, I decided to move to live with a different family member that lived in my original home area. This is where the story shifts. On the last week of my bus rides, I told Tom I would no longer be taking his bus anymore to school, because I was homesick and moving back home. He asked me to sit up towards the front of the bus for the rest of that week so he could say goodbye better. I didn't think anything of it. He was a 40 to 50-year-old man who never gave me any red flags. I listened and moved to the seat right behind him so he could look at me through the large mirror above him, and we could chat. It all seemed innocent at first. He asked about my mother, why I was leaving, what I wanted to do when I grew up, blah blah blah. The last few days of riding the bus though, the questions got more strange, and I may not have been able to see the signs of a creep, but I knew the questions weren't things a middle-aged man should be asking a teenage girl. If anything, I thought he was just being nosy. He asked if I had a boyfriend, if I'd had my first kiss yet, and what my ideal date would be. I answered honestly, but with a weird feeling in my stomach. Gut feelings are 500% accurate. As I got the bus on my final day, Tom asked me if I would sit in the front again, but to wait until everyone else was off the bus. I agreed and went back to my past seat in the back of the bus and waited until everyone got off. I moved to the seat behind him again, but this time he didn't say anything to me. At first, anyway. I probably should have mentioned earlier, but from the last stop before me to my stop, there was about 25 to 30 minute driving distance. I'd say he didn't say a word to me for about 20 minutes of that time. I sat listening to my music until I noticed he'd pulled the bus over. We were on my road and I knew my house was close ahead, yet he pulled over and stopped the bus. If I could explain to you the fear that ignited in me when that bus came to a halt and Tom turned in his chair so he was facing me with a smile on his face, I would. I had seen one too many movies with creepy men doing things they shouldn't be doing to teenage girls, so expected the worst. I was expecting to be assaulted, kidnapped, or maybe even killed, but thankfully it never came to that. Instead, Tom told me to take my phone out and add his number to it. He said he would be here if I needed to talk about my mother, telling me the story of his own mother and other things I can't really remember. I just remember it being an innocent conversation, no matter how weird you might think it is for a bus driver to offer a teenager his number. He dropped me off after that and we said our goodbyes. Years passed and I was in 10th grade by the time I saw Tom again. I still had his number in my contacts, but obviously never contacted him, even when things got rough. Because honestly, what girl would call a strange bus driver when she needed help? Not me. I was at Walmart with a few friends and we decided to split up to get the things we individually needed. I headed off to get a box of Q-tips when I heard someone say my name. It was a male's voice, and I figured it was just a male teacher I had once, but no. It was Tom. Although I couldn't tell at first, he had grown out his facial hair, and I honestly had just forgotten all about him, but once he said hello to me, I remembered everything. I wasn't necessarily scared, I just found it odd that this man who was my bus driver for a few months remembered me after over 2 years. We had a simple conversation. He asked how I had been and how high school was going for me, and I answered, not really bothering to ask how he was. We said our goodbyes, and I met back up with my friends, explaining to them the whole story of Tom, to which they all found scary that I had never told anyone about it. I explained to them that I thought he was just being friendly, because I truly did. I haven't seen Tom in person since then. Years have gone by, and I'm now in college. I thought the story would have been over then. Just some overly friendly bus driver. He could have stayed innocent, right? About a month ago, I was talking to someone I went to school with at the other school, and I mentioned to her how scared I was thinking about the bus out there because of Tom. She was shocked I had mentioned him and asked for the full story. I told her a summary of it, the questions, the stopping the bus to give me his number, the encounter at Walmart. I told her he just gave me the creeps and I hoped I would never see him again. This was when I found out Tom had been arrested for sexually assaulting 2 minors. She not only showed me his mugshot but told me what had happened. My story nearly lined up perfectly with these 2 other children. Bus driver who asked personal questions, offered his phone number and comfort to children with trauma and acted on it. The only difference was I got out of there. If I hadn't moved back to my hometown, I still wonder what could have happened to me. I'm extremely lucky that I never contacted his number and feel sorry for the 2 kids that did contact him, feeling they could trust this man. I know you're in jail, Tom, and are not getting out for a while, but please, let's not meet again.
This happened years ago, but still haunts me to this day. Back when I was in middle school, I lived next door to a small neighborhood. All I had to do was hop the fence, and I'd be in the neighborhood where all my friends lived. We were all between the ages of 12 and 13. There were 5 of us. One of the houses we were always at had a backyard on the edge of the woods. We had created trails through it, complete with bridges over the creek that led to a reservoir of sorts where all the rainwater went, as well as the water that drained from the sewers. I say sewers, but it's runoffs from the street, and we used the tunnels under the road during intense games of manhunt. Anyway, we called that place the Wall. The Wall backed up quite literally to a house in the neighborhood and the next street over, and we could clearly see houses through the trees in any direction we looked. So it's not like we were ever far. Besides the trail we took, there was a main exit along the fence to that house, aforementioned, that led straight into the heart of the neighborhood. Now the Wall was right by the next street over, on our side. Where the Wall sat, there were 3 houses. One of those houses lived a well-known police officer whose kids were friends of ours. The opposite side had some massive farmland to the left, and a heavily wooded area to the right, complete with its own empty, boarded-up, creepy house that couldn't be seen from the road unless it was winter. No one has lived there or even been there for years. I'm trying to paint the picture for you so you can understand. We were very, very close to other homes, which makes this story an odd one. One day my friend and I, just the 2 of us girls, decided to go to the Wall. Taking the familiar trail through the woods, we made it there. Weeks prior to this, the group of us had been trying to build a bridge, so we were going there to continue our work. Between picking up branches and heavy stones, we noticed something coming from the woods. Across the street, it was a man. The man was dressed head to toe in camouflage, typical hunting gear that I've seen before. The weird thing was, he had a shotgun in his hand in a residential area. Luckily, we noticed him before he did us. and I'm so glad we did. When he noticed us, his eyes locked on both of us, and his pace began to quicken, and he made a beeline straight to us. He never said a word, or even lowered his weapon. It was just in his hands, ready at any given moment. We snap out of it and sprint toward the exit, into the heart of the neighborhood, running straight to my friend's house to tell someone. We tell our dad immediately, and he goes to check it out, only to find no one there, not a trace. I don't know where or how that man was out of sight so quickly. Her dad wasted no time and was down there in seconds. The wooded area where the man came from was not large, or at least not large enough to even consider hunting in. And it was definitely not hunting land. It is an extremely residential area, along with an elementary school that we used to walk to in less than 5 minutes. And I'm not exaggerating. The school was right there. So I never understood why the man was out there, especially since there was a cop who lived right next door to where we were. To this hunter, I hope we never meet. That incident scared us so badly that we stopped playing in the woods, and we never returned to the wall.
Okay, so this is pretty anticlimactic, but it still sorta gives me the creeps. At the time of writing, I am 16, female, and this happened from the time I was 9 right up until I was 14. When I was in primary school, 4 years old till 11 years old, I had a best friend, Marie. Marie's parents were separated, and her father lived on the same street as me, whilst her mother lived a town over. She spent the week with her mum and the weekends with her father. I would often go to his house and play with Marie when she visited. We'd play hide and seek and other games like that. Marie wasn't exactly the best child, and her play fights left me with scratches and bruises. Her father spoilt her and always had sweets and money in the house. He was always on dating sites or Facebook and was an avid Arsenal fan, watching every single game. In the summer, if I was playing in my garden, I could hear him shouting at his TV because of a match outcome or goal. He would take me and Marie out and would buy us McDonald's and once a pillow pet because I wanted one so badly. I remember my mum being kind of weirded out when I said that Marie's dad bought it for me. He would take us swimming too, but I don't remember much of those trips. Marie's father was around 5'11", stocky, with a bald head and ears that stuck out. He had a very kind smile and was soft-spoken with a very, very deep voice. I used to walk home from school and he would often wave out of an upstairs bedroom window down at me. I would wave back and smile or say hi and he'd return it. The summer of me being 10, I was over at their house almost every weekend. When I was 11, Marie moved with her mother to a seaside town and we went to different secondary schools. I lost touch with Marie and never really hung out with her again. Now I need to lay out my route home for this next bit to make sense, and I'm really sorry if this is confusing. My road is like an L, with the longer part being a shitty tarmacked road, and the shorter part being up a hill. I could walk up this road to my house that was at the top of the hill. The houses were like a T, with a row of terraced houses along the top of the hill, and another row going down the hill along the road. The backs of the houses faced the road and an alleyway lead round to the front of the houses that I could also walk along to get to my house. Whichever way I took to my house, Marie's father would see me as he lived around halfway up the hill in the row of terraced houses that went down the hill next to the road. When I'm in my room at home with the blinds up, I can see Marie's father's house. Let's call Marie's father Ken. Ken would open his window, lean out and watch me from his window. It would take me a few minutes to notice him watching me, and as my bed was right next to the window, I would often be in pajamas or minimal clothing. I would wave or smile and he would cheerily wave back, I would close my blind and wait a couple of minutes before opening it, and he would be gone. This happened multiple times. My mother put it in a net curtain for me so that nobody could see in through my window. I change my sheets at night and do it often in my underwear as my bed is in a weird position and changing sheets required a lot of effort. I have to sit on my windowsill, so I would often have to remove the net curtain. I have no idea how many times he has watched me contort and struggle to change my sheets, bearing in mind I was around 13 or 14 when I began noticing these things. I walk home from my bus stop the same way I'd walk home from primary school, and every single way I would take to walk home, Ken would always see me, would always wave hello and smile like he was expecting me or something. It creeped me the fuck out. I began to get scared to see him and my heart would race. I started to completely ignore him as I'd speed walk home, earphones in my ears blasting music. I thought he was watching me, waiting for me every day. One day when I was 14, I tested my theory. There were 2 ways I could walk past Ken's house and both would lead me home. The first way was the way I usually walked, along the tarmacked road and up into my back garden. It passed the back of his house. However, from the bottom of the hill I would be able to see his window and see if he was there waiting for me, and I could divert my route to go around the front of his house, along an alley, up the hill and to my front door instead of the back. One day I saw him in the window at the back of his house and I tried not to reveal that I knew he was watching me. Without stopping on my route, I diverted to walk up the alley in front of his house. He had crossed along the top floor of his house. When I reached his house, some way up the hill, he was looking down at me from the window at the front of his house. He was definitely watching me. I power walked home and immediately dug up Marie's contact info. I told her to tell Ken to stop watching me walk home and that I thought it was creepy. She did what I asked and told me Ken was only waiting for his girlfriend to get home and that he always watched for her. I can hear every car on my street pull up from my house, and I never heard any the hour after I got home. I know Ken's girlfriend drives a BMW, and I know what it sounds like. Luckily, he stopped watching me after that, and I've never really seen him again. So Ken, let's never meet again.
I was around 4 or 5 years at the time. Me and my mom and my older sister, who was around 12 at the time, went to a small shopping mall that was very near to our apartment, and it had just 2 floors. Downstairs was just a really big grocery store, and upstairs were around 10 to 15 smaller shops. We went downstairs, where they also had a toy section. I was checking out the stuff there. My sister and mom were just a few meters away on a bench, my mom showing my sister a book. Suddenly I couldn't find them. They were maybe only 2 or 3 meters away from where they had been before, looking for different kids' books. But little me panicked and started running around. Instead of staying put where I was running further away and in total panic as a small child who thinks he lost his mom. I ran and ran and ran and ended up out of the grocery store. I ran upstairs and started looking around in the small shops. I was crying by now and panicking even more with every second that felt like hours. I remember my vision being that similar to the camera work in the Blair Witch Project. All of a sudden, I found myself outside. There was an exit to the backside of the mall from the upper floor, and also the shortest way from this small shopping mall to our apartment. So I was now standing outside crying and in total panic. Suddenly, I see a man around the age of 45 to 50 approaching me. He asked me what had happened, so I told him I lost my mom.
Hey, don't worry, I'll bring you home.
I'm not allowed to go with strangers, I replied. He then said with a very wide smile,
You don't need to be afraid of me. I just want to help you.
He asked me where I lived, so I told him the address.
Oh, just there, is it? That's very close. I'll take you there.
Me, in total panic, and seeking for help, of course, agreed. A small kid in panic will do anything an adult asks him to. For information, when you walk into the mall, from the back, to the right, there's an info desk. It was around 10 to 20 meters away from where we were, but instead of taking me there and asking them to call for my mom, he told me to come with him. We walked like 20 meters further down the road, and he took us to the right instead of the left. I stopped and said, "Our apartment is in this direction, not this way."
Oh, look, my place is just over there. I just want to drop my bags off, and then I'll take you home. Don't worry,
he said. I started to walk with him, and I noticed he was grinning. I still remember his face and his strange grin to this day, even though 37 to 38 years have passed. In that moment, as we were about to turn the corner, my sister came running out of the mall and called out my name. I quickly turned around and ran towards her with a feeling of absolute relief. My sister asked where I had been, and I told her that the man was trying to help me. She was a smart little girl and turned to the guy to ask him why he hadn't brought me to the info desk. He just said,
"Oh, I didn't think about it. I just wanted to help,"
and walked away as fast as he could. My sister then showed me the info desk and told me if I were ever to get lost again, to come here and tell them, and they will help me. I remember this instant after I heard a friend tell a similar story that had been in the news of a guy who convinced a small child to come with him so he could give them some toys. You can only imagine what had happened to that kid. I'm not 100% sure what the intentions of that guy was, but there were too many red flags, and I think I got away just in time. Thank God. Why didn't he bring me in and drop me at the info desk? Why did he want to go to his apartment first? I think I dodged a bullet there. So, dear stranger, let's please not ever meet again.
Here's some backstory and info before I begin. This is something that I found out about a week ago, but has apparently been ongoing for several years. I'm 24 and female, and my partner is 24 and male. His ex-girlfriend before he met me, another key member of this story, is also 24 and female, and her ex-boyfriend, the one directly before she dated my boyfriend, is 35. To start, I began frequently attending a goth club and their events that happened once a week. My two best friends are there regularly, so I decided I would work on not being a depressed hermit that never leaves the house and start socializing and making more than my two only friends. So I started going with the intention of making new friends, and I did. It was all going really well, and I'm usually very shy and anxious, but I started feeling safe enough there that I was able to open up to people approaching me and befriending them. One night I kept noticing a goth boy in makeup and platform boots, because 1, he has a cool cape, and 2, he seems to always be somewhere nearby. It's a large club with several rooms inside and outside, but I didn't think anything odd immediately. He eventually approached me to say hello, and I asked if I knew him, since I've noticed him nearby frequently throughout the night, and he says, "Yeah, you're Nero's girlfriend, right?" I replied, "Yeah. So you're a friend of Nero's then?" He laughs and says, "Well, kind of. We just have a mutual ex-girlfriend. All of my boyfriend's exes are pretty terrible apart from one from the stories I've heard from him, his parents, and his friends. So I had no interest in hearing any more after that. I told him it was nice meeting him and ran off to rejoin my friends. The very next week he's there again and says hello when he sees me. I realized before that I hadn't asked him his name, so after he greeted me I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name last time." He says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was so drunk I'm embarrassed for even bringing up Marie like that, but my name is Gerald." I tensed up hearing Marie's name because she was the girl who Nero dated before me, and she still openly admitted to having feelings for Nero, and had tried to make advances several times from the moment we started dating. They were all shut down, by the way. I trust my boyfriend, but I have a very strong dislike for Marie. "Oh, so your mutual ex is my very favourite one," I said sarcastically. He nodded. "Yeah, be careful with Marie. She's a dangerous one." He talked a bit more about his previous relationship with Marie, mostly about how manipulative she was, how much she cheated on him, and was just generally bad-mouthing her. He kept stuttering and seemed a bit awkward and shy, so I wrote him off as being harmless, and we finished our conversation. We didn't speak again for the rest of the night. Over the next couple of months I went there every week as usual, but suddenly I noticed that Gerald was there too. He hadn't been someone that regularly attended before, but I wasn't really feeling paranoid about it yet because 1, he was so awkward, shy and innocent when I'd talk to him, and 2, it is like the only goth club around, so maybe he just discovered he liked the place and was also trying to make new friends. So I told myself that it would be irrational to think that he was there just because of me. I have PTSD and an anxiety disorder, so it's not uncommon that I have irrational, intrusive, and sometimes paranoid thoughts, so I chose to ignore him. One afternoon, Marie calls Nero as he and I were lying down to watch a movie. She wanted to catch up and see how he was doing. They had been friends for years before they dated, and while I don't particularly like her, I trust him and I would never try to dictate who he can and can't be friends with. He has a pretty short casual conversation and asks if she needs anything else, then hangs up the phone. "Oh, that reminds me, I forgot to tell you I met one of Marie's exes a little while ago." He laughs and asks which one. "His name was Gerald," I reply, and my boyfriend's smile immediately fell from his face. His eyes became wide and all the colour drained from his face. "Did you say you met Gerald? Where did you meet him? What did he say?" Feeling panicked by his reaction, I'm stuttering. "Nora and I at the club one night, and he asked if I was your girlfriend." My boyfriend starts freaking out. I should also mention he has several severe mental disorders, one of them being a panic disorder, so he's on the verge of having a panic attack, and I'm trying to calm him down in all of my confusion. When I finally get him calmed down enough, he starts to explain. Before him and Marie dated 5 years ago, she had broken up with Gerald for having abusive and obsessive behaviour towards her. Afterwards, Gerald began stalking Marie. He would wait outside of her house, wait for her to leave, and follow her everywhere she went, never confronting her but just watching and writing it all down in a journal. Writing down what she was doing, how it made him feel, writing down all the little things she would do throughout her day. In this journal, he also wrote about how he was sorry for cheating on her, telling her about the 2 girls he cheated on her with, a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old, and he was 30 at the time. It was already odd, in my opinion, that he was a 30-year-old dating the 19-year-old Marie, but he also cheated on her with underage girls, and he openly admitted it in this journal. And when Marie started dating Nero, he began following Nero as well. Another important thing to know about my boyfriend is that he has schizophrenia. Nothing could possibly be worse to a paranoid schizophrenic trying to create stability in his life than an actual stalker following him around, making him feel that much more paranoid. Gerald followed them around, writing about both of them in the journal. He printed screenshots from their social media accounts and pictures of them he'd taken, pasting them into this horrifying journal. And then Gerald waited for Marie and Nero to be at her house, and then he left this journal full of horrors at her doorstep. Obviously, both of them panicked when they read the contents. Nero begged Marie to go to the police, but she didn't want to. Something about her child and being scared of it making her look like an unfit mother. I don't know. Nero broke things off with Marie due to incompatibility, and a year later we met and ended up dating pretty quickly. But unbeknownst to him, Gerald had never stopped stalking Nero. We discovered he would make false accounts just to try to check in and see what Nero was doing, since he'd blocked all of Gerald's accounts that we knew of. We found that Gerald had added Nora, mine, and Nero's close mutual friend, and of course on her Facebook there were lots of pictures of the three of us together, which is how Gerald found me, and I typically accept friend requests with a decent number of mutual friends, so Gerald had added me from there before we'd met in person, realising that I was Nero's current partner. I'm pretty open about a lot of things, which I'm now realising can be bad, with most of my posts set to public. I'm always posting pictures of Nora and myself at this goth club, every week, so he knew that he could run into me there, and I'm sure hoping that Nero or Marie would be there as well. But since learning about all of this, I started looking back through the photographs from the weekly events, and I'm finding him somewhere in the background near me numerous times without me knowing. He played the shy, awkward card, and I really fell for it. I was stupid and fell for it. Yesterday, talking to other friends about my discoveries and showing them who he is, lots of them had said, "Oh yeah, I thought you were friends with him because I always saw him following you and Nora around." I felt so nauseous I wanted to vomit. I was somehow so oblivious. I didn't even realise that my boyfriend's ex's ex had been stalking me, following me through the club, appearing in every room I'm in when I'm in it. Nero showed me pictures of the journal entries and it was horrifyingly scary. My stomach dropped and I felt sick. How could I have been so naive? My safe space no longer feels like it is safe anymore. He just spreads his obsession, continually growing and latching onto others involved, while he's still following Marie. Even after all these years. She's afraid when she leaves her house, and now I'm afraid to leave mine. I'm afraid to go back to this club and see him again. I'm afraid for my friends that attend. How much more will his obsession grow? Who else is he going to follow? Has he followed me home? Does he know where I live now too? I've been feeling so paranoid and unsafe. I haven't left my boyfriend's house since I found out. I'm afraid to be home and alone. I obviously won't be going back to that club for a while. I asked Marie to take the journal to the police and get a restraining order. I want one myself, but I'm not sure that I have enough evidence to support needing one, but she definitely does, having that journal. I hope one day soon I won't have to look over my shoulder every time I leave my house. So, you manipulative, predatory, creepy stalker Gerald, let's not meet ever again.
This happened in the year 2000. I was 21 and living with my best friend in a 2-bedroom apartment in a pretty rundown area. Fortunately, there was no crime, as everyone who lived there was broke. It was just youngsters starting out. I spent my days juggling classes at the local community college and working in retail. I was single at the time and would often spend my time online all night on chat rooms and Usenet. I had met this girl in the local area chat room, and we have been hitting it off, or so it seemed. I'd email her, and we'd chat on ICQ. She had sent me a few pictures, and I was really into her. She was pretty, and a curvy body, just my type. Her name was Beth, and she had told me Beth by Kiss was her favorite song. One rainy night in February, we were chatting online when she had asked me to come over. She lived a few towns over, maybe an hour away. Like I said earlier, we were hitting it off, and honestly I found myself liking Beth a lot. So I jumped at the chance to actually meet her in person. We made plans for me to pick her up and go to the Waffle House. I showered and got dressed. Nothing too fancy. One of those long sleeve shirts with a stripe across the chest, jeans and a hoodie. I didn't want to overdo it, but still wanted to look decent. By the time I left, it was almost 11 p.m., and my roommate was asleep in his room. I headed out, excited and a bit nervous. In hindsight, I should have stayed home. It took a lot longer to get there than I thought it would, probably thanks to the rain. But sure enough, our directions took me right to her place. It was a double-wide trailer in a rural area trailer park. I walked up to the steps of the front porch and knocked on the door. I've always been pretty shy when talking to girls that I liked, and I was still nervous when she opened the door. The door opened just a little, and a little voice told me to come in. I walked in apologizing for taking so long, in a little bit of a nervous daze. She said it was okay, and to have a seat. I sat on the couch, and then for the first time, I looked up at her. I saw that it was not Beth. It was a much older woman, maybe in her mid-40s, wearing only a bathrobe, sitting down across from me. I don't want to body shame, but I need to point out that she was huge. I'm a big guy, over 6 foot, with a big hoss-type body, and she was much bigger than me. I glanced around, trying to figure out what was going on. I saw pictures of the Beth I knew on the wall, the same pictures I've seen. Hey, who's that guy in the picture with this older woman? I thought. I looked back at her, and instantly noticed that she was staring at the clock nervously. I asked what was going on, and she started mumbling nervously. Imagine a child telling you what they done when in trouble. That's how she was talking, like a child caught red-handed. I pieced together that she used the other pictures of a girl around my age. I'm assuming the girl was a niece or something. In her mumbling, she said it was later than she realized, and he'd be home soon. My mind instantly raced to a friend telling me his uncle caught his wife using pictures of their daughter to lure younger guys over for anonymous sex. I quickly realized the guy in the pictures was her husband, and I was in the same situation. I fully respect others' relationships, and was instantly ready to go. No longer nervous, I told her I was not going to mess around with a married woman. I told her to no longer contact me, and I was leaving. I was pissed. Not only had I been lied to, but I had been cheated on before. I know exactly what that felt like, and refused to have part in doing that to another person. As I walked out the door onto the porch, she yelled at me to wait. I turned around instinctively to see her coming towards me. She grabbed me and started trying to kiss me. I pushed her away and told her to stop. Her face turned into a mask of pure insanity. She rushed me, once again, trying to kiss me. I tried to hold her back, but in a second, she tackled me, knocking me over, with her falling on top of me. She kept grabbing at me, grabbing at my genitals, kissing me, and crying like a baby. She kept screaming for me to F her. I was trying to push her off, but the fall had knocked the wind out of me. Not to mention, like I said, she was huge. I kept wrestling with her, trying my best, and somehow worked my legs in between us. I pushed them as hard as I could, knocking her off of me. She stumbled up and fell over on her porch furniture. Adrenaline took over, and I ran as fast as I could, down the stairs and into my car. As I was sliding into my seat, I saw her picking herself up at the bottom of the stairs. She must have fallen down them, trying to get at me still. I backed down the driveway, and as I looked back before driving away, she was coming down the driveway, her bathrobe hanging half off her, her naked body exposed and covered with scratches and dirty from her falls. I drove off as fast as my Ford Escort would take me. I don't know how I didn't get in a wreck from constantly looking in the rearview mirror, hoping she wasn't following me. I found my way back to the main road, and before long realized I had gone the wrong way, I pulled into the first gas station, intending to turn around. I noticed no one was following me, and the gas station was well lit and had a few cars. I felt safe now and parked up, trying to get myself together after that insane scuffle. I still can't believe how scared I was. If you have seen that face and been through that tackle, you'd understand. I collected myself and got out of the car to use the bathroom and make sure I wasn't hurt. The adrenaline was wearing off, and random pains started creeping in. It was then that I noticed the gas station was uphill, overlooking that trailer park. I could see her standing at the bottom of the driveway. It looked like she was holding her head, crying. At first, I felt bad for her. I'm a nice person to a fault. I've often let myself get sucked into bad situations by feeling bad for a person I shouldn't have. I saw this crazy person crying and felt bad. Then I remember her crazy stuff and the pain creeping in, making me wonder if she'd seriously hurt me. So I used the bathroom and left. As I was getting back in my car, I looked back one more time. I saw a car in the driveway, and a man was yelling in the front yard. I guess he got home while I was peeing. Can't imagine what it had to be like coming home to your wife, standing naked in the driveway, crying. Judging by her mumbling before the insanity, I figured she wasn't a good liar. I got home, and the next day, told my roommate what happened. I didn't want to at first. I felt ashamed for some reason, though, like I said, he was my best friend. He knew when something was wrong, not to mention I was limping around. My entire body was killing me. He figured she was unhappy in her marriage, and maybe her screwing around made her a little crazy, or maybe she was already crazy, and the situation set her off, maybe on drugs or something. I don't know. I cut off all contact, and it's been almost 20 years since that night. I've never seen or heard from Beth again. I'm 41 and happily married. My best friend is still my best friend. Even though he no longer lives in the state, we never really talk about it. Outside of this, I've only talked about it to a therapist I visited during a particularly hard time in my life. My wife doesn't know. I still feel pretty ashamed about it. The therapist told me it was probably from a little PTSD type thing, not to mention guilt from perceived gender roles. Maybe. Beth, I don't know if you got help or got worse. I don't care. I hope I never see you again. Let's not ever meet again. Ever.